We're going to cover the guitar-friendly key of E. We're going to learn every single chord shape you need to be able to play any progression in the key of E. So let's dive right in. We're going to start with the standard E chord here. You can see the chord diagram on the screen as well as the close-up view there. And so chord diagrams, again, I've covered this in another video. Essentially, you're looking at the guitar like this, like so, and obviously it's vertical, but it's going to cover what fingers to use. So you can see here right away, we are on the G string there, the third string up from the top with our index or pointer finger on the first fret. We are using our ring finger on the D string, second fret, and then right above that, we are using our middle finger also on the second fret, and that forms our E chord. You can see those circles mean open string, so E chord is a nice full chord, and this is why the key of E is just a beloved guitar key. It's really fun to play in this key, so nice big E chord. Well, let's move right along. Got a little variation. You can keep the same shape, but we're just dropping the pinky on the second fret of the G string, and that forms that E sus4. So you can even rock back and forth between those like so. Kind of chord diagram there. Switch that, so, or. And that's a real nice variation you could use in a lot of songs and chord progressions, even when you have just kind of a standard E chord. We've got this E5, which this is kind of unique. It's essentially, the reason there's a black bar there is you're kind of using this index finger to bar. Try to show you that there, get the other fingers out of the way. And then I'm placing my pinky on the G string, so the third string up from the bottom, and I'm placing it on the fourth fret. So I'm using the pinky finger, that's why there's a number 4 there. And it forms a real nice, like, open, kind of power chord. The reason it's an E5 is there's no third in there. It's a little bit of music theory, but real rich chord as well. So that's an E5. Then we've got an E5 high. So you'll notice on this chord diagram, it's got a reference there for the 5th fret kind of becoming the nut of the guitar right up here. The nut, I've got my capo on there, but the nut of the guitar is essentially the 5th fret there. And then you're going up to the 7th fret. So you've got your 7th fret. Try to show you that there. You've got your pointer finger on the 7th fret of the A string, the 5th string up from the bottom. And then, this is essentially a power chord shape if you know power chords. Then 2 frets over, 1 string down, you've got your ring finger on the 9th fret, and that's of the D string. And then right below that on the G string, 3rd string up from the bottom, you've got your pinky right below that, also on the 9th fret. So real nice open, high, sparkly chord. And that's our E5 high. Then we've got an F sharp minor. This would be your 2 chord in the key of E, 2 minor chord. And this is a variation. You might be familiar if you look online, like this. That would be like a bar chord, F sharp. And this is not a tutorial on bar chords, but I honestly prefer these open chords. So this is an F sharp minor. And you can see there, one thing that's unique is we have got an X there for this A string. We're muting that A string, and I'm essentially using kind of the fleshy part of the middle finger here to mute that A string to get that kind of a sound. And you can see we're using the middle finger on the 2nd fret of the low E string there. Then we're skipping that A string, we're muting that, and then all on the same fret. So we've got strings down here. We've got the D string on the 2nd fret using our ring finger. Right below that, our pinky finger, also on the 2nd fret of the D string. And then the bottom 2 strings open. So you got that real nice open rich F sharp minor 7th chord. Then this is another way, this kind of a variation to play this F sharp minor 7. So you'll notice there's a common note being kept here, right? This pinky, we're switching to using our pointer finger, and then we're going 2 frets over, 2 strings up essentially. We are doing our 4th fret using our pinky. So that's pinky, 4th fret on the D string. Then right above that on the A string, we're using our ring finger, also 4th fret, but this is the A string, the 5th string up from the bottom. And then you'll notice we're muting that top. So again, different ways you can do this. You can just not play the top if you're kind of keeping that open, or I kind of use almost essentially the very tip of this ring finger to kind of just slightly rest on that top and mute it. You could, if you got a thumb reach here, you could reach over your thumb and mute that. but then you're leaving the bottom two open again. And again, real rich way to play F sharp minor 7. Then you've got a high version. So remember the E5 high up here? This is essentially a variation of that. You're actually keeping, so let me show you this real quick. Let me get that E5 high. So if you started from there, that E5 high, what you're doing here is you'll notice you're keeping this, this pinky here, you're keeping on the 9th fret of the G string. And then this, this pointer finger, this index finger is dropping one string down, and this ring finger is coming up to the 9th fret, and this is your A string. And then again, you're muting the top now, similar to the F sharp minor 7 on the bottom there as well that we just went through. So that's like a F sharp minor 7 high. So it works real nice if you use those kind of in together. This is the E5. Try to get that in view. So that's your E5. Switching to that shape that you see on the screen there with the chord diagram, F sharp minor 7. Then, now you've got an E over G sharp. This would essentially be your third, right? Your third note in the key of G, if you're going up the major scale in terms of chords. And so this, that's an E over G sharp. And you can see what happened there. If you push, you don't want to push down on this A string. You can see that's another muted note. And so you've got that, what you're doing is you're using your ring finger on the very low E string, the first string if you're looking from the top down, and you've got it on your 4th fret using your ring finger. Then you're skipping the A string, you're placing your index or pointer finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and then 2 frets over, 1 string down, you've got your pinky finger on the 4th fret of the G string. And you get that E over G sharp. The reason it's an E over G sharp is this top note is a G sharp. The bass note is a G sharp. So that would be your 3rd chord. And then we're going to go G sharp minor 7. Now this would be if your 3rd was a minor, a true minor. And you'll notice here, I'm going to put the F sharp back, get this F sharp shape. It's essentially the same shape, slid 2 frets up. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but it's sliding that shape 2 frets up. So you'll notice that. And that's why you've got that 3rd fret as a reference there, essentially for your nut on that chord diagram. And then same thing here. You've got the G sharp minor 7. It's that same shape that we learned here. If we go put this one on the screen, if you slide that up 2 frets, you've got this G sharp minor 7, the same shape. So again, I won't spend a ton of time on that one. And then same thing here, G sharp minor 7 high. If you remember the this one here, this F sharp minor 7, if you slide that 2 frets up, notice it's the same shape on the chord diagram there. Real nice, pretty sparkly G sharp minor 7. You've got that G sharp minor 7. And then we've got good old standard A. So now this, if you're using the E back here, what we started with, the good old standard A. Oh, sorry, that was an A suspended. There's your good old standard A. And now I've got kind of fat fingers, so I struggle with that. I tend to bar the A like that, even just a standard A, I'll tend to bar, and then essentially that bottom note becomes muted. But let me show you this. The variation with the E shapes, it's really nice to play this A suspended 2. And so all you're doing from that standard A is you're lifting off that pinky, or in some cases you'll learn A like this, where you'll actually use your ring finger, middle finger, and index finger. So let me go back to that standard A shape for you so you can see this, the variation. And again, I very rarely use this shape just because my fingers are really squashed in there on the 2nd fret. So I tend to, if I do a standard A, I'll use my pinky. But in the case of this A suspended, you'll notice there, it's literally just lifting off the B string, leaving the B string open, and you've got this A suspended 2. And notice I'm muting the top, so I'm actually using my thumb to mute that top note. And then now, similar to the E, we've got a high version of that. So if you remember the E suspended, all you're doing, or sorry, the E5 high, all you're doing here is lifting off this, all I'm doing is lifting off this index finger and playing it open like that. Try to show you that there. And really, this one is just kind of, it looks like it's fretting, but it's out of the way there. You're essentially playing those two fretted notes. You're not playing the top string. So everything else is open. Now in this case, I'll either just be careful to not strum that open. It doesn't sound terrible if you play that open E. It would actually be an A, a 1 over 5, or sorry, the 4 over 5 in a sense. You'd be playing as if you were in the key of A, so you'd be, the E would work because you're putting that 1, in the key of E, you're putting the 1 on top. So it's not horrible if you play the open E, but you want to be careful just if you're trying to strum it real cleanly, just start on the A string, strum down, or sometimes I'll use this index finger to just lightly rest on top of this E string, the low E, and then that'll kind of mute that low E. So that's a high A suspended 2. If we move on, let's see, yeah, this is an A add 2, so this is real rich as well. You can hear that there. So the reference here is 3rd fret is essentially your nut, as you can see on the chord diagram there. And we're starting at the 5th fret with the index finger. This is very similar to that E, that high E, in the sense that you're kind of starting with this power chord shape. So index finger on the low E string, 5th fret. Then you've got 2 frets over, 1 string down, your ring finger on the 7th fret. And then you've also got right below that, you've got your 7th fret of the D string with your pinky finger. And then the difference here is that I'm adding this middle finger kind of in between those, as you can see there. I'm adding the middle finger on the 6th fret of the G string. And then leaving the other bottom 2 strings open. So real nice, pretty A chord, A variation. Then we've got a B5. Now B often scares people because you think, okay, oh man, I've got to use a bar chord. And again, this is not a lesson on bar chords. We'll cover that in another lesson. But bar chords can be hard, but they also sound kind of closed. And so I prefer this B5. And again, it's a power chord shape if you notice a theme here. A lot of power chord type shapes in the key of B. And so that power chord is essentially that there's no third. So it's a B, that's why it's called a B5, as I covered with the E5. There's no third in it. A little bit of music theory, but... And you can leave that, because we're in the key of E, you could leave the high E open, or you could mute it. And what I tend to do there is kind of close down a little bit and use the fleshy part of kind of this index finger. I use the fleshy part of that a little bit to kind of mute that high E, and the chord sounds a little more closed. So it'd be something like that. Can be a little tricky to get just that high E string muted, but like I said, in the key of E, you could also leave that just ringing. So that's your B5, you can see there, right? You can see that shape. I've covered the shape quite a bit, so if you notice, you could slide up. There's that high E5. Just slide that all the way down to your index finger being on your 2nd fret, and you've already got that shape down. So again, high E, slide it down to 2nd fret, and you've got your B5. Then, you've got a B sus4, which now this is, if you're keeping that high E string open, that's technically what you've got, is this suspended 4. So real similar. Then let's see, I'm gonna cover the C sharp next. And so I'm actually gonna show you this shape first. So and the reason why is, again, you've got the power chord shape. So now, if we take that B that we just learned, let me get that back on screen for a second. Slide that 2 frets up, and you've got a C sharp minor 7. And you're keeping the high E open in this case. So B, slide up, C sharp minor 7. Again, real pretty open version instead of like your bar chord, right? So instead of that bar chord, you've got that C sharp minor 7. You can also add, you saw that for a second, you can add, similar to that A add 2 shape, you can add the middle finger on the, it'd be the 5th fret in this case, and then it would be your B string. If you can add that down, it's very similar to your bar, but you're just not barring with this index finger. You're lifting that off, and you've got a C sharp minor. It kind of be a true C sharp minor. And then to get that C sharp minor 7, lift that middle finger off, and that's your C sharp minor 7 shape. Then I'm going to put on screen, let's do this C sharp minor 7 shape. So this is now another variation of this. If you're kind of sticking down here, and this works real well, if you remember back to the video where we covered this, let me put it back on the screen for a second, where we covered this, this E5, if you remember this. Remember that E5? So now, if we get that off screen, and I go to this C sharp minor 7, the alternate shape here, it's essentially leaving this pinky there, and then instead of barring with your index finger, that is just covering the 2nd fret of the D string, and then the ring finger is coming up to cover the 4th fret of the A string. And this is, again, just a variation, real nice open C sharp minor 7. So again, with these shapes, you can always pause the video, kind of just stop, get that chord diagram, use that to form your fingers and get those shapes down. So that's a C sharp minor 7, an alternate there. If you truly were going to play like all the chord shapes in the sort of family of the E major scale, you would need a B over D sharp. This would be your 7th chord. And so this one, you can notice it's similar to the A. Essentially what you're doing is if you did bar the A, when I talked about barring the A shape, like that, let me get those fingers out the way. What you're doing is you're sliding that up, and then I'm using, you can either use your ring finger, or you could use your pinky to get that 6th fret of the low A string, or the A string, the 5th string here. And it gives you that B over D sharp. The D sharp is being the lowest note in the chord. And you don't really want to strum that top E. So again, you're using kind of some of those muting techniques. In this case, I'm using the kind of the very tip of my pinky, or you could use the kind of the tip of your ring finger and just rest it lightly on the E. And I'll cover muting in another video as well, but these are just different techniques to kind of mute the strings of the guitar that you don't want to ring out. But that's your B over D sharp, and then it works real well when you go back to the high E5, which we covered earlier. So that's all your chord shapes to be able to play in the key of E successfully. Again, any progression. What you want to do is kind of get used to doing something like this, right? You'll go E, so that was that B over, didn't do it super cleanly, but that B over D sharp to the E. And that's essentially walking up the E major scale using chords, and you could switch out the different variations that we covered. You can kind of mix up the different progressions, and again, you'll be able to play any song in the key of E major on the guitar. Real rich and pretty key to play in. The reason it's so popular amongst guitarists is, again, a lot of open strings that you can just let ring out, and it sounds real pretty and big on the guitar. So I hope that's helpful, friends. What we'll do is we'll cover more of these keys. So far, I've done the key of G and now the key of E. I'll cover kind of the same walkthrough of all the different chord shapes you need to know in the different keys. So like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Hey, if you're a worship leader, I'm a worship leader myself, so these shapes come in handy. Would love to get a free gift into your hand. I'm going to pop this on the screen here. And if you go to influentialworship.com, I put together a guide that is 6 practices you can implement this week to gain more confidence in your worship leading, and not a arrogant, like proud confidence, a godly confidence in the Lord. So again, if you implement these 6 practices, guarantee you it'll help you with your confidence and equipping your team in worship leading. I put this together because I wish I had a practical guide like this when I started leading worship. It was very much baptism by fire. So go to influentialworship.com, pick up your guide, and I will see you in the next video.